sometimes when you go to church, you hear a message, sometimes it might sound a little bit more like a seminar than a sermon. Tonight might be one of those times, but I think we're still going to be on good footing. And we want to be a help to our homes. I really do. The home in America is in great, great need. And if we can do a little bit of something, it'll be worth it. I've read that 50% of homicides are directly related to domestic issues. 50%. 22% of police killings result from domestic disturbances. It's one of the most dangerous calls that a policeman can make is a domestic issue. Our homes are in trouble. Somebody said the young couple got married looking for the ideal, got an ordeal, and didn't want a new deal. Listen, we gotta do this thing right, don't we? We need to do it right. I've worked with single adults in my ministry. I was a single adults pastor for 14 years, and I've seen broken marriages. I've seen people in absolute misery in their lives. I've known people that were just in a bad way. I've seen people get married. I've been involved in a good number of marriages over the year, weddings, performances, and so helping people. And some of them turn out good. Some of them don't. I've seen people get married. I remember we married one couple, and I told our senior pastor, and I helped him a lot on that. I said, "This ain't going to work." He said, "I know, but we got to do it." And this guy, he was the son of one of our deacons, and he got married, and guess what? It didn't work. I mean, it was doomed before it got started, and that's sad. It's tragic. I've seen other situations. I remember this one couple got married. They were in my singles class, and I told Robin, I said, "I don't think this is going to work either." But you know what? It did. And they were happily married for a good number of years. And the guy was, he got sick and he died. He wasn't too terribly old, but his health wasn't great. But I think they were reasonably happy together. Our homes need a lot of help. I want to do some things, and hopefully we've already gotten a good start with that. Tonight, I want to talk about communication in the home. And this is not, I have a tendency to want to gear this towards husbands and wives. But let me tell you what, husbands and wives need to communicate, but children and parents need to communicate as well. We need to be in touch with our kids. And when I look around and I see the young generation coming up, I'm gravely concerned about our young people. And so we need to have good lines of communication open with them. As far as biblically, we know Proverbs talks a lot about communication in the way of your speech and your talking, and basically a lot of those verses are about the power of speech. I think about Proverbs 18:21 that says, "Death and life in the power of the tongue." Proverbs 10:32 says, "The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness." Proverbs 16:24, "Pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones." These all come to the issue of communication. Tonight I want to give you 7 tips to help you in your communication. Again, this could apply to any relationship, whether it's a husband, wife, a parent, or a child, any kind of relationship that needs communication. It's an area that we need to work on. Counselors will tell you, marriage counselors will tell you, one of the greatest needs in a relationship is good communication. And listen, Rob and I, we're pushing our 40th anniversary come February. And I can tell you right now, we still have to work on that. It's something you always have to be on top of, communication. And just because you're speaking words doesn't necessarily mean you're communicating very well. Communication is somewhat of a complicated process, and I'm going to give you a little something here in just a moment to kind of illustrate just how complicated that can be. In fact, let me give you this. This is kind of cute. Communication can be tough. A lot can go wrong. Now listen to the steps that have to take place in good communication. What husband intends to say? What husband actually says? What wife hears? What wife says to herself about what she hears? What wife intends to say? What wife actually says? What husband hears? What husband says to himself about what he hears? And you can see, that's a little humorous, but these are part of the steps in good communication. Well, I said this. Well, I thought you said that. I mean, it's a process. And good communication, though, is absolutely necessary for a healthy relationship. No matter what that relationship is, we need to have a good, healthy relationship. 7 tips. Number 1. Our first tip to healthy communication is this. Talking. They'll all be T words. I like to help you with that. Talking. We actually need to talk. There was one study that said the average husband and wife spend 27.5 minutes a week talking. I don't mean pass the butter. What's for supper? I mean talking about life. Talking about the relationship. Just good, solid communication. You need to talk. Socrates, he was a wise man, wasn't he? Socrates said this: I can think of no person who one talks less than his wife. Well, when did he live? I don't know, several hundred years before Jesus, I know that. Listen, we're a long way past that, but could that be said today? Could that be said today? I think it could be. Some of us in this room know who J.R. and Sue Ellen Ewing were, right? J.R. said, the less we have to say to each other, the better I'm going to like it. Now, I don't think J.R. and Sue Ellen had a model marriage, but maybe that was a part of the reason why. We have to talk. Now, it's true. Communication involves much more than talking, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. There's nonverbal communication, body language and tone and so forth. But we still have to talk. We have to talk if we're going to communicate. There are lots of hindrances to talking. There's the rat race. And listen, most of us understand a little bit about the rat race. There's so much to do. There's so many places to go. There's so much on our plate. But we've got to find time to talk. Kids hinder Other family obligations hinder us from talking to the members of the family. I remember either reading or hearing about Susanna Wesley. And Brother James, how many children did she have? Did she have like 17 kids or something? Do you remember that? It was a big number, wasn't it? I think it was 17. That's the number that's in my head. And as I remember, she made sure she spent time with every one of those kids, individual time, to just talk and be with them. And listen, we have to work through these hindrances. The media hinders us from talking. Fatigue can hinder us from talking. Fear can hinder us from talking. What do you mean, preacher? We might be afraid to say what we feel like we need to say or want to say. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of a reaction. You know, in a good, solid, loving relationship, we don't remove that fear. We ought to be safe. But we need to talk. We've got to talk. What do you talk about? You ought to write this down. You talk about whatever is important to you. I'm not even going to name that. If something is important to you or to the other person in this relationship, be it a child or a spouse, you can talk about it. If it's important, if you don't talk about it, guess what? Chances are it's not going to be addressed or dealt with or whatever needs to happen. You've got to talk. You have to talk. Number 2, tuning. Tuning. T-U-N-I-N-G. Tuning. You have to tune in to the person you're communicating with. And what do I mean by that? Talking is a two-way street. Listening is a part of it. Tuning in to what the other person is saying. James said this, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let me be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath." Swift to hear. Now, of course, I think he's referring to hearing the Word of God, but still there's swift to hear. Or one preacher say, God gave us one mouth and 2 ears. Maybe we ought to do a whole lot of time listening rather than just spouting off our view and our point of view and so forth. But tuning in, listening. When you listen to someone, this is powerful. When you listen to someone, you're sending a message to that person that they are worthwhile, that they have value, that you're willing to give the most valuable thing that you have to them, and that is what? Not your money, your what? Your time. Your time, your attention, your time. Your time. God made us. He knows us. I believe God ordained marriage. Ever question that? Though some attack it. There are a lot of things that come from this very special relationship in the home. And one is this. In the home, we're supposed to learn and we're supposed to practice that people have value. That people have worth. Today the world talks so much about self-esteem, but they know very little about how it's attained. Okay? They go about it, in my opinion, all the wrong way. Let me tell you what, if somebody has true, if they do have esteem, if they do have worth, and we know every human being does, because we're all made in the image of God. And that person you need to communicate with, be it your spouse or a child or whoever it is, has worth. That means they're worth your attention, your time. You should listen. You should listen to them. We need to listen actively. That means there's interaction, and if you're hearing, then you could be able to give it an exchange and interact with that person. You need to listen with empathy. The Bible says, rejoice with those that rejoice and weep with those that weep. You need to listen with empathy. You need to listen with openness. And you need to listen with awareness. If someone has something to say, and again, if it's important to them, it ought to be important to you, whether it is or not. In fact, if it's important, this person that in your life, again, a spouse, a child, and again, we're talking about the home, so someone in your home, if it's important to them, guess what? It's important to you. If it's not, then you're not where you need to be. Something's important to somebody in your relation, in your home, they don't get important to you. And we need to listen to people. You have to listen. Lots of couple seminars and counseling sessions, they have listening exercises to practice listening. You ought to practice listening and make it a point to be sure you're giving an ear to those people in your household. Number 3, telegraphing. Telegraphing. Again, we're getting here to a part of communication which is nonverbal. You know, you can hear someone without listening to them. Or you can listen and not hear. I don't know which way you want to put that. But just because the words are going through your ear canal and vibrating on your eardrum doesn't mean you're listening. And when you're communicating with somebody, there's this thing of telegraphing, meaning we send signals non-verbally. A lot of communication is through facial expression, body language, tone, and when we're doing that, we're telegraphing a message, and there's a good chance, and sometimes you're going to be telegraphing the message that I really don't want to be here doing this. I'd rather be out doing something else. This doesn't interest me, and your mind's somewhere else. I like to tell a little story. We had a lady in the church in Maryland, and she was a few degrees off-center, you know what I mean? But she was a worthwhile person, because she was a human being. But she was what we call high maintenance member. Is that what? She was high maintenance and required a whole lot of attention. And the pastor used me to do some of that maintenance, senior pastor. And one day she wanted to talk, and she came in at about 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30, somewhere right around that time. You know what happens around 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Just think of 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. What do you want to do on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock? You want to take a nap. How many of you took a nap this afternoon? Let's see. Well, I dozed for 30, 45 minutes. Well, my body shifted into nap mode. This is awful. My body shifted into nap mode. And she's telling me, pouring out her life to me. It's all I can do to keep my eyes open. I'm fighting it for everything I'm worth. And finally she stood up and said, I can tell you when to go to sleep, I'm lazy. I was telegraphing. Now, I really did want to listen to her. But my body was saying something different. And if we're genuine people and we genuinely care, we will telegraph the right things to the people that are important to us through the non-verbal things. Telegraph. Number 4, What do you mean by that, preacher? I mean being honest and straightforward. A lot of times we want to avoid some of the difficult things. When you avoid the difficult things, when you avoid the things that are important to you, I'll tell you what's going to happen. It's going to start festering. It's going to start building up. You get into those things, and before you know it, you've got a wall, and the thing begins to come between you and the people that are important in your life. We need to talk about the things that are important to us. I think about the verse in Proverbs 27:5, open rebuke is better than secret love. Sometimes there are things that need to be said which won't necessarily be easy to say, but ought to be said. Of course, you say those things in the right manner, with the right spirit, and so forth. And that's a chore in itself. But again, being honest. Proverbs 28:23, he that rebukes a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. Being honest and straightforward always produces the right kind of fruit. Again, it's not always easy. Oftentimes it's hard. When we don't address what's important to us, when we're not specific, we're not honest, here's what happens. When we don't ask for what we need, when we don't express our true feelings, when we minimize important words, acts, or events, ultimately we are being dishonest. To not talk about some things, to avoid things, is in essence being honest. Dishonest. We need to, our homes, again, need to be places of safety. What does that mean? That means that we ought to be able to talk about the things we need to talk about without fear and target the issues that need to be addressed. Tara was just telling Robin the other day about some conversations she's had with some of her kids. Her kids, just 3 of them. And I said, you know what? That is really neat that they feel like they can go to a parent and talk about those things. You know what? That's right. Targeting those important issues, those important things, and we need to have that freedom to be able to be honest like that. Number 5, touching. Touching. What do you mean by touching? I mean physically touching. The first form of communication that we exercise as human beings is communication through touch. Studies have been done on the effects of appropriate touching and communication through physical contact versus the lack thereof. There are actually physical things that happen in the body, hormones and a chemistry in your body that reacts to appropriate touching. The benefit is to the one touched and to the one doing the touching, the one hugging, the one receiving the hug. There are actual things that reduces stress. It gives a sense of trustworthiness. When touching is reciprocated, it just makes for a beautiful relationship. You know, I think about felines. Cats. What do cats like to do? Who's got cats? Who's got cats? Not too many cats here. Oh. Cats like to touch. Just this afternoon, I think it was this afternoon, maybe last night. I'm sitting on the couch. Here comes the cat, lays down at my feet, and does what? Puts its paw on my shoe and touches me. I remember reading about a guy, I forget his name. How many remember the story of Christian the lion? Do y'all know the story of Christian the lion? He was a lion cub that was raised in Great Britain somewhere. And he got too big to handle. So they were going to try to release him into the wild in Africa. They took this guy that gave his whole life working with lions. His story is just, it's remarkable. They released this lion in the wild and it adjusts. Later on, they went down there about a year, maybe a year or two later, and they went looking for Christian. That's the name they'd given to him. They went looking for Christian the lion, and they found him. And when Christian saw them, I mean, he was a huge lion. I mean, he was big brother. I mean, he was full of them. And when he saw, he came running up to them and jumped up on them. I mean, huge. Gave them the big, I said, well, it's a bear hug. It's a lion hug. Gave them a feline hug, and just like a little cat. I mean, this big cat. But I remember seeing pictures of this man. He lived with cats, with big cats. And I remember a picture of him laying under a tree there in the plains of Africa. Here's this big old cat, just like our little cats, with his paw thrown over top of the guy. They're napping. Touch. Studies have been done in couples and when they're younger and in the new parts of their relationship, the infancy of the relationship, touch a lot. As time goes along, they don't touch as much. That's not good. And I'm talking all kinds of touching, from hand-holding to just a touch on the shoulder. They've done studies. There was one study where, I forget what country this was done in, they did a little study of a library. They monitored this, but when the librarian would touch the patrons, and some they touch on the arm, touch on the shoulder, versus not touching them. And then they surveyed the patrons of the library. The ones that were touched always gave, or generally gave a more favorable impression of the library. They have found that sales increase when people walk into a business establishment and there's touch involved. It's tragic that we live in a day and time where touching has almost become taboo. I think about some of the restrictions that teachers are under in the public schools. We've become such a degenerate people that touching is considered illegal and off limits today. I'm going to tell you what, children need to be touched. Need to be hugged and loved and cuddled. And when they don't have that, the effects are devastating. And it's true in adult relationships. There needs to be touching. I know some churches are hugging churches, and I know there are preachers that don't like to. In fact, I heard one preacher say that he practiced the stiff arm method, the stiff arm method, and he wouldn't let. It all needs to be appropriate. You understand. I went to the hospital yesterday and I saw a woman, poor thing. And while she's laying there, I just kind of pat her on the shoulder. I mean, sometimes a touch is the best thing you can do for a person. Now, Jack's sitting right there, and Beth's sitting right there, and you know what I'm saying, but it was just an act of compassion, love, concern, and care. I've been at the bedside of people that were dying, or very close to death. I remember one lady, and I don't do this all the time, but I just stroked the lady's hair. She was so bad off. It was just pitiful. It's just touch, just touch. And it's a great form of communication. They've done studies, and the percentages are really high about how often people can tell what's being communicated through a touch with no other form of communication, whether positive or negative kind of touching. And touching is very, very powerful. And we need to practice that in our communication. Number 6, timing. Timing. Some people have the philosophy, just open up and let her rip. Timing can be very important in communication. Proverbs 15:23 says, a word spoken in due season, how good it is. The proper timing. Proverbs 29:20 says, seest thou a man hasting his words? There's more hope of a fool than him. There's the right time to say certain things. There's the wrong time to say certain things. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. Just because it comes to your mind at the moment doesn't mean that's the time to say it. And some things you just need to sit on anyway. But the timing of your words can be very, very important. If a situation is particularly volatile, you don't want to talk about that unless both people are in a pretty good mood. Listen, husband just came in and he's had a 14-hour day at the office, and he's dog tired and wants a shower, wants to read the paper or have supper. Listen, that may not be the time to talk to him about the heavy stuff. Timing can be very, very important in good, healthy communication. Number 7, this may be one of the biggest ones I've given you. This is the last one. Number 7. Turning. Turning. What do you mean turning? I mean, turn off the TV. Turn off the radio. Turn off the computer. Turn off your phone. Lay your phone down. Turn your phone over. Put your phone in the next room. Put it on silent. Turn it off and talk. My wife did not believe this. But I really do enjoy going to a room where there are no electronic devices and just sitting there and talking, whatever. And we don't do it as much as we should. But I really do enjoy it. And we just have to put in the time. We have to turn some things off, make some time, prioritize, and just spend time communicating. Listen, if we love our homes, if we love our families, if we love our spouses, if we love our children, we will make the time to communicate. Don't think I'm a heathen, but I got another pop song that I think illustrates some of this. How many remember the song by Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle? Indulge me and let me read the verses to you. A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away. He was talking before I knew it, and as he grew, he'd say, I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know I'm going to be like you. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's play. "Can you teach me to throw?" I said, "Not today." "I got a lot to do," he said. "That's okay." And he walked away with his smile never dim and said, "I'm going to be like him, yeah. You know I'm going to be like him." Well, he came home from college just the other day, so much like a man I just had to say, "Son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?" He shook his head and said with a smile, "What I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please?" I've long since retired. My son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, "I'd like to see you if you don't mind." He said, "I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle. The kids have the flu. But it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's sure nice talking to you." As I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And of course, there was chorus. I don't know when, the last two lines, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, and you know we'll have a good time. Then, I don't know when. And the when what? The when never came. The when never came. And here's a father and son in a very distant relationship. See? Because the father didn't have time to communicate with the son. Happens in marriages, happens between adults and their children, and other important relationships that we have. Communication is a crucial part of marriage. And I'll just say this. Probably the biggest block of communication is just pure selfishness. We just got other things that we want to do that are more important to us. And I got to do that. We want to have good, strong homes. Communication is key. Let's bow our heads together. While your heads are bowed and your eyes are closed, you would think that communication would be easy, but it's not. It's not. It takes hard work to be a good communicator in a relationship. As sinners, we have a view towards self. Selfishness is always a huge problem. Affects everything, mostly our own relationships. We've got to realize that there are some things that are absolutely important. We've got to prioritize those things. Most of all, we've got to put God first. If God's first, these things will fall into place eventually with work. Make sure that your heart's right with the Lord. It's right with the Lord, and you'll be willing to work for these things, and God will help you. He will. Father, thank you for your word. We know that you have created a home. There's so many precious, precious things that come out of homes when a home functions properly and it's God-honoring and centered on Christ and the Bible. We know in a good home there's going to be good communication. There's caring, there's love, there's compassion, there's tenderness, there's openness, there's honesty. We need that. I pray that you help our homes, help our families, help our husbands and wives, help our parents and children have good relationships and open lines of communication. We'll thank you for what you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Brother Tom.